Hey, last weekend, my sister Marla, my wife, and I saw Lenny Kravitz in Las Vegas. And it was an incredible concert. There is no doubt the man is connected to music and the way that he presents that. It was awesome. But what was more awesome were the lessons that we learned from Lenny. There's three specifically. Number one, early on, maybe right out of the gate as he was talking to the audience, he talked about his purpose. And he said that his purpose is to amplify love. I loved that because it was not linked to something he is doing. Like his purpose is not this activity. His purpose is actually not being a musician or a songwriter or a singer. His purpose is to amplify love. His music is the way that that's delivered. When it comes to purpose, we're often wrapped up in the delivery system. We want to know what we are going to do. We're going to find our purpose. We're going to find this thing, this work that is so fulfilling and so life-changing. And I don't know that there's anything wrong with that mentality. I just think that it gets very difficult to locate this activity that we always seem driven by. And he was really talking about himself as a vessel, as a container, versus I am this thing. I'm here to amplify love. That might be delivered through music, right? It could be delivered through serving in a soup kitchen. It could be delivered by being a Walmart greeter. It doesn't matter what is being done. It's simply that the core of this is to amplify love. So that was the first lesson. I thought that was really great. That purpose is not connected necessarily to an activity. It's simply who you are. Secondly, he talked about the room that evening, and he said, we're in a chaotic time in the world, and we would love to change the world, but tonight, we can't change the world tonight. But what we can do, we can absolutely change this room. And by the end of tonight, we are all going to be connected. We are all going to be filled with love by connecting with the Creator. And he talked a lot about God, and I thought that was interesting. And it was interesting just to hear the dynamic of the crowd when it was associated with God and when it wasn't. But when he said that we're all going to be connected and we're all going to feel this love, he said, we can't change the world, but we can change this room. Sometimes we're trying to take on too much responsibility. We're trying to change the world when we need to be changing our world. And the change obviously begins with ourselves. And we begin by changing ourselves and becoming better ourselves. And then we continue to change those around us. Sometimes it's just with our presence, that they notice that we are being different, that we're interacting differently, that we're using different terminology, that we are affected in a different way. We're not responding as harshly as we used to. We're not being as sarcastic as we used to be. So they're seeing those subtle changes, and what happens? Our world changes. Our world around us changes. Now, some people decide to stay and they love it and they grow too. And others decide to depart because you're not the same person that you used to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the ebb and the flow and the change of the world. And so we may not be able to change the world overall, but we can certainly change our world. And I'll agree, Lenny changed that world within that center that evening. We did feel connected by the end. We did feel the love by the end. And speaking of love, his closeout song in lesson number 3, the first lesson was that our purpose is not necessarily connected to action. Number 2 is that we can certainly change our world, even if we can't change the world. And number 4 is he really talked a lot about receiving. So he said this final song was Let Love Rule. And he said, if this was the only thing that remained out of my catalog of music, this is the song that I would want to remain. He said, because this was my very first download. And here's what he meant by that. He said, up to that time in life, I had been trying to make my way. I've been trying to make music, to create music myself through my own power. But this song, I didn't write. I didn't make it. I received it. And it came from above. And this song, Let Love Rule, was the very first download I received. I thought, what an amazing contrast between making or forcing music and receiving music or flowing music. See, a lot of our life, we're really trying to force things. We're trying to make things. We're trying to reach for the goal instead of simply asking, hey, what should I be doing right now? What should be flowing through me right now? What needs to be received right now and actually takes place rather than me forcing me trying to make it. And I'm not saying at all there's anything wrong with setting goals or forcing it. I think that can be great at times, but I think too few of us are trying to receive guidance. Too few of us are trying to just simply sit quietly and ask, what would you create through me right now? And I think that was a great lesson that we learned from Lenny. And so if you get a chance to see him, definitely. If not, look up a couple of bios, and he's going to be speaking about amplifying love, most likely in these at some point, especially if it's recent. And he's going to talk about receiving music instead of just simply sitting down and trying to make it. Let's start receiving more. Let's start allowing the creative process to flow through us rather than us trying to force everything and strong arm everything and control everything. Less force, more flow. Be blessed.